Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Supergirl. A lot of very interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break everything down. Basically, Supergirl shows up. Obviously, this is still after her basically being fired from the DEO. And so she ends up hearing something's going down, so she goes to investigate. She finds a ship where people were attacked and, one particular person was killed by some aliens. And so it's kind of interesting. She shows up, she saves the day and everything. And the moment Haley get there, she's like ripping like Supergirl a new one. It's like, what the hell is you doing? You're talking about, oh, you shouldn't have gotten involved, this and that, blah, 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 blah. It's like, she's Supergirl. What do you expect her to do? Like, cause that's the sad thing. Cause it's like, well, what about Superman? Like, you've never held Superman to the same standards. I mean, I guess it's just because Kara worked with the DEO, so because there's that tenuous connection now, even though she's fired, she's still kind of held by the standard of like, you can't just be saving the day. I mean, even Haley's kind of like, oh, I thought she'd be off, stopping speeding trains or saving kittens, but like the fact of the matter is, oh, she's all in our business, this and that. It's like, for one, she's been saving the world from multiple alien threats. Like, come on now. What's the big deal? Once again, Superman's been around a while, saving the world from alien threats and other stuff like that. And it's just so interesting. Like, I don't get why Haley had such a stick up her butt, even being like, oh, you contaminated the scene and blah, 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 blah. It's like, even Carmen's like, if I literally didn't get here, a bomb would have exploded. You would have known nothing about this. And it's just like, oh, this and that. And it's like, why you have such a stick up your butt? Now kind of, well, she comes up with an excuse later on because like this all deals with Morai. These are invisible aliens. And that's such an interesting thing. Kara can't fully see them, but she can see a glimmer because of her X-ray vision. Because, I mean, her eyes are like, I mean, especially in that degree, they are like probably tens, if not hundreds of times stronger than a human's eyes. So she's probably able to like see certain lights, because I don't know how like X-rays work in the whole light scales, because I don't know how that would all work, but I'm assuming it's like she can penetrate through certain lights that a normal human eye wouldn't be able to see and stuff like that. That's what I'm trying to say. So Haley was like, yeah, we knew about them being invisible, so the whole shimmer thing, I really didn't know anything when Kara mentioned it, but it's because, Kara's X-ray vision that she can see a shimmer when no one else can. But it's like, it turns out that the Morai are actually children that Haley and two other people, as part of this, basically raised them to be assassins, which is messed up. They were children before they were turned into assassins. And what makes it matters worse, for one, it's like they were kind of like inflicted with trauma, because it's like, make them fear us, because if they fear us, there's no way of disobeying us. They'll go do things without hesitation. So they've been forced to do this for such a long time, killing people and stuff like that. And then like the moment the president was like, yeah, we're cutting all ties with like alien, stuff like that and blah, blah, blah. So one of the dudes in charge of that operation, one of the three people who knew about it, was like, oh yeah, we need to kill those things. And now it's kind of like, I don't know, it's hard to say, because Haley gives Alex this whole excuse, this whole rundown of like, yeah, you do terrible, disgusting things that maybe don't sit right with you, but the fact of the matter is for the greater good. The fact of the matter is soldiers always do things that maybe they don't like, but they're following orders. Like I said, it's for the greater good and stuff like that. It's for their country. But at the same time, it is that situation of like, it did seem like maybe it bothered her, but it's hard to say. It's like, did it bother you back then, and does it bother you now? Because the argument could be like, you're only bothered by it now because you got caught up in it and they're coming for you. And that's the whole situation too, because it's like, because the thing is like, once again, it's the whole shimmer and, invisibility thing. Like, if she knew they were invisible, maybe it would have clicked in her head. But the moment Kara mentioned that particular soldier's name, it should have clicked in her head like, this is a little suspicious, but, so. But it's like, you lied to us and someone else is dead. Like, if you had told us the truth from the beginning, maybe we could have done something to stop this, and it's just kind of like, it kind of continues down a route of just kind of like, man, you just dislike Haley more and more, especially because she's on this rampage to figure out Kara's identity so she can control her. It's like, oh, the moment I find out who Supergirl really is, then she'll have no choice but to kind of work with us and stuff like that. To the point, like when she figured it out, kind of using whatever tactic she did to kind of force someone to admit, which is also interesting. That kind of, I think I kind of alluded to that conversation before, of like, because I assumed, I was like, oh, everyone at the DEO must know about Kara and Alex. It's like, no, literally only like a handful of people literally knew about who Kara's real identity is. I mean, I guess it is such a top secret thing that you only want a small group of people to know. And I feel like that's never come up because I just assumed everyone at the DEO knew. I mean, to be fair, she never kicked it around. Has she ever showed up at the DEO as Kara? I don't remember. Anytime she says she's always Supergirl, so it's like, of course. So she's never gone from Kara to Supergirl. She's always just been Supergirl there, at least to my knowledge and stuff like that. So it was just kind of interesting learning that so few people knew that there was just that whole situation. But the fact is, Haley's so adamant about it, just because it's like. Because it's that thing of controlling her. It's that whole thing of like Kryptonians are these unstoppable forces, and for them to go out there and do whatever they want willy-nilly, that power needs to be in check. It's like, once again, it's like Superman's literally been doing his own thing. Maybe the argument is there's other superheroes in existence that kind of keep him in check potentially, because there is the whole Batman and him relationship that was alluded to and stuff like that, but I'm sure maybe there's other superheroes they've probably maybe alluded to existing on Earth 38, but haven't really expressly been like, yes, they exist, type of thing. Or, because it's like Kara and Superman are good people. Yes, there have been moments where they've kind of been swayed to kind of do evil stuff just because it's like, oh yeah, they're being controlled like Superman was in season 2's finale or stuff like that. But it's like, other than that, it's like they've done nothing but good. I mean, it's that thing of like, when something is that powerful, you can't help but fear it. It's just human nature. And that fear is driving their decisions. I mean, it's just like, because literally even the president's the same way, because it's like, because Kara is an unchecked power, because it's like, if I don't know who you are, I can't control you, which is like, that's such a shame, especially because he tried to make a whole assumption about like how like, oh, my family's in danger all the time, but that's why Secret Service is there to protect them and everything like that. Once again, I made this argument back then. Your situation is different. Yes, that's a whole deadly situation all on its own, just being president and stuff like that, your family being threatened. But then like Supergirl literally has superpowered and aliens with superpower villains. These are not just villains, these are super villains, like the worst of worst people on a technical scale who could do a lot of damage, and you're telling her it's like not that big of a deal that her identity's out there. It's like, oh, my family's like, it's an apples to oranges situation. It's almost like he's being like, oh, your situation's an apple, mine's an apple. It's like, no, yours is an apple, hers is an orange. It's a situation all on its own. And what makes that even more effed up is that Haley literally throws that in Kara's face. It's like, now that you're going to do what I say, and I'm going to talk to the president about getting you reinstated, but the fact of the matter is, you fall in line, you listen to me, or what's going to happen if all of those villains find out about your family? I'm like, do you not realize the bullshit you're doing? That is super messed up. You're up here complaining about Kara with her power. You up here power tripping, dude. That's crazy to me that you're literally threatening the people in her life. Like, that's some bullshit. Like, I cannot stress that enough, how messed up that is. And that just puts it in your mind, like, Haley's just a terrible person. It's like, she's kind of been an asshole. You kind of gave her a little slack. But this, it's just forever kind of like, no, you're an asshole. Like, holy crap, you are a dirtbag for that. That is insane that you would threaten the people, maybe she would have never followed through with it. Maybe it was just a threat to, get Supergirl in line. But it's like, Supergirl would happily work with you. She'll follow the rules. She has a complicated situation. But at the same time, that's because it's like, hey, she has her own morals. And it's like, it's almost like you're demonizing her for being that because she cares too much. To the point even Alex is like, I gotta quit. But Kara's like, you can't quit because you have to be the morality, because if you're not there, like, Haley's going to do whatever she wants to, because like the others don't always agree with what Haley believes in. They believe in what the DEO and what Alex believes in. But the fact of the matter is, she came in and she kind of just has been shaking things up, and it's just like, dude, that's insane. What's interesting about all that I like is the fact is that you have Brainy being able to compartmentalize in his head like information. It's like, yeah, it's like she kept asking me about Supergirl's identity. So did you say anything about Kara? Why would I say anything about Kara when it comes to Supergirl? That they're the same person. He's like, what? Kara is Supergirl, same person? What? No way. Your sister who wears glasses? They don't even look up. And then it clicked, and I was like, oh, I was like, was that supposed to be a joke about how they look so similar? It's just glasses? It's like, no, compartmentalization timer went off, so he remembered again. I was like, that's so interesting. I thought that was pretty neat how that was kind of done, and just him compartmentalizing his brain like that. And it kind of seemed like it bothered him a little, like it just kind of seemed like it makes him kind of short circuit a little bit when it happens. He just kind of like he kind of had to go kind of snap back into it. But that was just so interesting. But then on top of all of that, the real kick in the teeth is that fact of the matter is Haley, you know, even with her mind wiped. Side note, I love the fact is Alex punched her and took her down. I mean, Alex was like, man, I want to take her down, but then I'll probably get court-martialed and stuff like that. But like, Alex did anyway, because it's like, you know, she will always protect her sister no matter what. Which now involves wiping her memory. Not just hers, but all the other agents too, because now Haley's bringing in this alien that's a truth seeker. So they have to wipe everyone who knows, including Haley, including Alex, because no one at the DEO can know, or it puts Kara in danger. And Kara's like, no, don't do that. Like, just quit or whatever. But she's like, no, I can't. The only way I'm gonna be able to fight this is from the inside, and the only way I'm gonna be able to see on the inside is if I forget. Because even Haley, when she found out, was kind of like, oh, you've been undermining everything. It's like, how has she been undermining anything? Because her and Kara have been kicking ass and taking names and saving the world way before you showed up. So it's like, it just seems, it's such BS, you know, and it just sucks. And the thing about, like, because what I'm so fascinated about is, like, what does this mean going forward? Because now Alex will never know that Kara and Supergirl are the same person. And that means, like, I'm curious, because that means, like, a lot of her memories will have to be rewritten, because I feel like their relationship got stronger. Like, they've had moments throughout their life to... Well, I'm curious, too, does that mean... Because that means they have to undo a lot in her memory. Because let's not forget, like, we've seen flashbacks. Like, what was that, season 2? Or was that? Yeah, that was season 3, where they went back, you know, in Kara and Alex's younger life. So that means they probably have, like, John would have to wipe her memories of knowing that Kara even has powers, so they don't associate that situation. I would assume, like, you'd have to go deep into her memories to unscramble that. But that's the point I was trying to make, is, like, her being who she is, like, even back then they bonded, like, they've had their ins and outs throughout their relationships. But I think her being Supergirl strengthened their relationship. So the moment that disappears, that connection disappears from her head, what happens to her and Kara's relationship? Will it even be as strong as it was? Like, a lot of it comes down to what's forgotten. You know, like I said, like the whole Kara having ability things, her being an alien might end up being completely wiped from Alex's memory. That just adds such an interesting level to that, because now Kara even admits it too. She's like, I'm gonna have to lie to you, the person I've never had to lie to my entire life. You've always known who and what I am. And you, I have to lie to, the person that's my best friend. You're the person I rely on and love the most, and I have to lie to you. It's like, that adds another layer to this whole situation. That's incredible. So that's definitely going to be interesting. Like I said, that's the thing I'm looking forward to the most, is see how much this affects Alex and Kara's relationship. Like I said, this is proof of just how far Alex will go to protect her sister, because she loves her that much. And so I even love Kara being like, so what am I without you? Because it's like, you are literally the reason why I became Supergirl, to save your life. It's like the reason why she went out of her way to also save that plane. What pushed her into action was because Alex was on that plane way back in the pilot of the show. And so it's like Alex being like, it's my turn to save you. So, like I said, I'm so interested to see where that goes from here. Obviously, I like that Brainy's trying to build out a team for Kara, because she no longer has the DEO to support her. So he goes to John. He tries to pay John. John's like, no, your money's no good. He's like, oh, do I need to pay you more? Because I'll pay more. He's like, no. It's like, of course I'd help Kara out. Like, all she has to do is just come ask, and I'll help gladly. And he's trying to walk away, and then John is like, you forgot this. He's like, no, oh, that was already there. He's like, no, take your money back. I love that. But he also goes to Nia, which that whole thing was interesting, because Nia's like, wait, you asking me out? And he's like, yeah. And she you can tell she got super dressed up and everything. I love the whole, like, wait, she immediately calls him back. He's like, oh, what's this about? And she's like, fact is, we ain't set a date and a time about where to meet up and everything. But then he later on goes like, oh, if this was a date, I would take you somewhere like, you know, paintballing or an escape room, which kind of bummed Nia out. And he was like, oh, I didn't know that you might have even been interested in me. Someone as beautiful as you into me? I didn't think that was possible. She's like, well, who says I'm interested in you? And he's like, oh, I kind of messed things up here, didn't I? Which she says something later on I think it's kind of interesting, because she's talking to someone on the phone and she says, babe, or babe. And I'm like, oh, so do you have a significant other or something? That's what it sounded like to me. Maybe I misheard it, but it sounded like, oh, you already have a significant other. So it's like, oh. And that's why I'm kind of like, oh, like, are things not necessarily... Well, because it might be a situation because that person might not know. Because I'm sure, Nia goes out of her way to keep it quiet that she's an alien, especially under these uncertain times. But probably her significant other probably doesn't know, if that's what that was, in fact. So, but he's trying to convince her to kind of help out. Once again, it's because he knows who she is from the future, and she's kind of hesitant, and obviously she doesn't know that aspect because he doesn't want to say anything, because if he says anything, it could send her not on the path to being the hero that she is, and kind of undoes her timeline, and she doesn't save all the people that she saves and becomes a great hero that she potentially becomes in that regard. But I love that he's like, yeah, you could be a friend of you can, to be her ally, to be her friend, her super friend. I'm like, I remember those cartoons from like way back in the day. The Super Friends and everything like that. It wasn't until that popped up that I was like, I forgot that was a thing, dude. Somewhat Justice League before Justice League. The cartoon, I mean. But I completely forgot about the Super Friends cartoon. Man, had I completely forgotten about that. I haven't seen that since my childhood. Dude, that's crazy to even think about. But nevertheless, I thought that was kind of pretty neat. Because I'm sure there's like double meanings upon it. Because it's like, oh, you have superpowers, she has superpowers, so there's that. Which I'm sure that's where the original name of like Super Friends came together anyway. Because it's like a whole bunch of people, superheroes with superpowers coming together and stuff like that. Anyway, like I said, it's just meaning upon meaning. So I feel like they were specifically referencing that. But it's like at the same time, they could be not. Just because it's such a basic term of just being super friends that, you get what I'm trying to say, hopefully. But, yeah, it seems like she won't be embracing that necessarily anytime soon. So we'll kind of have to wait and see where everything goes on that front. But, sadly, two of the Morai ended up dying. One ended up killing itself just so it wouldn't get back to the DEO. That kind of shows you how much trauma and crap they were put through. I mean, they were children and everything. I'm assuming they're like teenagers to adults. So it's probably years of that, being turned into these perfect assassins. And it's kind of like, oh, you're surprised that they turn on you when you, in fact, turn on them, so. But luckily, Supergirl showed up in time to at least lock one of them away so it isn't killed. So it's a slight silver lining to it also. So that's all crazy all in all. Then we turn to the whole Jimmy and Lena situation. Now, I thought that was kind of interesting because obviously Jimmy, after his run-in with the Children of Liberty, everything, because he was going to do something he wouldn't have wanted to do. It almost cost Kara her life because he was trying to save someone else's life. So it's kind of him crossing his own moral code. And now he kind of realizes like, oh, I understand what Lena was doing. Like, I did what I did to sacrifice to protect someone. She did the same thing but protecting me. So it gave him a little bit more perspective because he was on his moral high horse and everything, but now he kind of realizes like, everything she did was out of love. And it's like, you can understand and feel the way you do, but at the same time it's like you can't fully like shut down or demonize everything she did just because of that, so for him, it's like, okay, I'm going to try and look at things going forward with a little bit more open mind. And then Lena tells him about, now, interesting enough, she completely omits the fact is of like the whole Harrenhal aspect to it. Just the fact is of like, oh yeah, I'm trying to create something like what was it? She said my penicillin, where, the whole thing of like, oh yeah, something was created for one purpose, because she even described it herself, like it was meant to cure cancer and all that, but inadvertently it's like, oh yeah, plus it gives people super abilities and powers and stuff like that. So what I'm curious about though is Jimmy says, oh, I support you, but I don't know what degree of support that is. Now, is that just support of like, hey, I love you and care about you, and we kind of got back on the right track, so I don't want to ruin things between us, which that angle could be selfish. But there's also the other angle of like, it's just me trying to be more open-minded, like I'm willing to give you a chance. Or three, is it just because or is it because maybe on some level Jimmy's thinking, hey, maybe I can take advantage of this situation, get superpowers himself. But to be fair, like the way Jimmy, like it looked like Lena was resting peacefully and you have Jimmy sitting there, I think it's because it does leave him a little conflicted. I think it's a combination of all three. Like he's trying to be open-minded, but I think that, because the conversation came up before too. It's like people having the ability at the end of the day, it's like, can people be trusted with those abilities and stuff like that? And then it comes down to the question of like, how do you know who and not who to and who not to give the abilities to? So it's going to be interesting. I mean, especially for Jimmy, because I mean, Jimmy became a hero in his own right with the whole Guardian situation, but at the same time, it's like, it's that situation of you're surrounded by superheroes all the time. Of course, you're going to feel a certain way. I mean, that's kind of, you can make the argument that's why he became Guardian in the first place. I mean, he had been friends with Superman, Clark for so long, and then like now Kara's around. It's like when you're surrounded by superheroes enough, it makes you go like, I need to kind of stick out more. I want to feel special, So, I mean, you can make the argument that's why a lot of people's insecurities about this whole situation kind of come up and spike up, because it's like, oh, I'm not special, but they are. How can they be special? And that causes problems all on its own. So I'm very interested to see where that dynamic ends up going. Like I said, they're going back into the direction of like, oh, everything is good between us. But once again, she hid the fact is that it's all from the hair and all, which it's like, that's not to be tampered with, because it's like, it's just like, just because you end up giving someone powers doesn't mean that in the long run it might not be a situation where like it might pluck at some darkness in people, or it might consume them or something like that. It's not to be taken lightly, but Lena's kind of doing her own thing with it, so we'll see in the long run what ends up going down with all of this. I'm very interested to see where this all takes us going into the next episode. I did forget to bring this up too. We did once again kind of get our one-line connection to Elseworld, because like Kara was like, I literally was just in a world where you didn't know me, and I don't know if I can handle that again. But it's like, even in a world where they didn't know each other, it still created a situation where that Alex put her trust in you and helped you out nonetheless. So, and also, like I said, it's just kind of interesting. Like, I figured every show was going to have like one line or something about the Elseworlds and just nothing else, just because that's typically how they handle the crossovers to a certain degree. So, but yeah, like I said, I'm very interested to see what the next episode has in store for us with all of this. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.